Are you aware of some of the more recent work that's been done by scholars in Israel, where these guys have now come up with this hypothesis that the burning bush was actually it was a DMT experience, and that the burning bush was most likely an acacia tree, that the acacia tree is apparently rich with DMT, and they think, the way you get a DMT experience is you smoke it, right? And that they had some method of achieving psychedelic states through this, and this is where Moses is encountering God.
Well, we have one of the
Have
things.
you read any of that stuff?
I know about the theorizing, and
Yeah.
it's certainly the case that people have been using psychedelic experiences for we don't know how long.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands of years, no doubt. And they've had a profound cultural consequence. One of the things that a psychedelic experience does is amplify that sense of intrinsic interest, right? So it strips your perceptions of their inhibition by memory. That's a good way of thinking about it. So that you see what's there instead of your habits of perception. And so it's a way of amplifying, you could think of it as a way of amplifying what's represented in the biblical corpus as a calling. And the thing that's odd about the calling, well, when you can think about it this way, when you're laying out a podcast, when you're participating in a podcast, you're following a golden thread, right? You're following where your interest takes you and your curiosity takes you. And that's not something you can pre-plan, right? It's something that happens in the moment. So imagine that you're focused on your goal of having the most interesting conversation possible and communicating what's derived to the broadest number of people. So that's the overarching goal. Okay, now you focus on the moment and a spirit arises within you. That's a good way of thinking about it. That's the logos. A spirit arises within you that leads you on a pathway that's an investigation into the truth. That's part of that calling. The psychedelic chemicals, they heighten that. They heighten the manifestation of the underlying mystery. That's another way of thinking about it. They do that neurochemically. And so now what's the association between that and religious revelation in the Bible? We don't know. We don't know.
Have you read any of Marco Allegro stuff?
No.
John Marco Allegro wrote a book called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I read that back. Oh, my God. 1974.
So you probably read it before it was bought up by the Catholic Church.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it was bought up by you used to have to get old copies of it if you wanted to buy it, and then it was recently republished.
Yeah, I read that a long time ago. I had no idea what to make of it. When I read it, I thought, I have no idea what to do with this.
It's a problem because to really understand what he's saying, you would have to have a deep understanding of those ancient languages.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a very difficult book to evaluate.
Because there's very few people that are even qualified to, many people have disputed some of his, he has one claim that the word Christ can be traced etymologically, how do you say it? Etymologically,
yeah.
To an ancient Sumerian word that means a mushroom covered in God's semen. Mm-hmm. And so it was his assertion that the idea was that they thought when it rained, that rain was the giver of life, and it was literally God's semen that made things grow, and that these mushrooms, because they would show up so quickly. Mm-hmm. If it rains, if you go to bed, you could look out at just your lawn, and it's complete grass, not a mushroom in sight. And you can go to bed and then wake up in the morning, and there'll be big mushrooms there. It's really weird. Mm-hmm. And that these things, when they would eat these psilocybin mushrooms that would appear out of nowhere, they genuinely were referring to them as God, that this was like a gift from God, and that was tracing back to the origin of the word Christ. But it's very tortured, to really understand and to be able to dispute it, you'd have to have a deep understanding of Aramaic. You'd have to have a deep understanding of Aramaic. You'd have to have a deep understanding of the original doctrines, what is the actual translation? What does it mean? You'd have to understand the ancient Hebrew version of it. How does it differ?
All the webs of associations.
Oh, God, it's so crazy. When we read it in English, I mean, what was the original version? The original version, all the ancient letters in ancient Hebrew also doubled as numbers, right? So words had numerical value. Like the word God and the word love apparently have the same numerical value. That is a bizarre concept for us to try to wrap our heads around. A language which that words also have numbers in them, that your letters also mean numbers, and that there's value, certain numerical value to certain words, and that you would use them in the context of these conversations. You would understand where I don't understand. I don't have that. I have English. It's like we have math, we have language. They're separate. And you're missing something in what they're trying to say.